welcome everyone. We're glad that you're joining us here today for this social justice panel and somatics. And I'm very excited to introduce to you our first guest, Yalini Dream. And Yalini is a cultural worker, performer, consultant, and wellness practitioner who reshapes realities in the lands of earth, psyche, soul, and dream. With over 20 years of experience supporting organizations and communities, contending with violence, oppression, and strenuous conditions through wellness and creative practices, strategic visioning, de escalation, and conflict navigation. Yalini, welcome back to the Somatic Movement Summit.
Thank you so much, Gayatri. It is my pleasure to introduce T. Aisha Edwards. Aisha Edwards is a somatic liberationist, healer, writer, and performance artist. Aisha works with a holistic approach to emotional and spiritual healing that fosters the sovereign relationship with the body as a vehicle to wellness, wholeness, connection, and liberation from all forms of oppression.
Thank you, Yalini. I'm feeling so blessed to be here and so grateful to be sitting in the presence of such genius. Let me introduce Adaku Uta. Hailing from Nigeria, Adaka Uta is a teacher, organizer, healer, and ritual artist committed to cultivating movements that are strategic, sustainable, and mutually nourishing. For over 20 years, their work has centered in movements for radical social change with a focus on gender, reproductive rights, race, youth, and healing justice. They are the co-director of Harriet's Apothecary, okay, y'all, and organizing director of the National Network of Abortion Funds. So I'm so excited to introduce Adaku, giving us a welcoming of ancestors.
Well, thank you so much, Aisha, for that warm and lovely introduction. And it is so lovely. I feel humbled to get to co-create this space with each of you. We want to open up this virtual circle today with reverence, in deep recognition that we do not do this work alone. Each of us are an embodiment of an ancestor's prayer, an ancestor's longing, fight for freedom and hope. And we know that our fight and journey towards liberation comes from ancestors who've been thinking about, dreaming about, dancing about, loving about how we cultivate transformation in this time. We also want to hold the grief, the magnitude of grief that ancestors and we alike are holding right now, given that many of our ancestors and transcestors have transitioned too soon. Last week in Atlanta, we saw the terrible racialized violence that happened with our Asian and Asian American communities. We had 8 folks who passed on. And this is on top of racialized violence that has happened since COVID started. And for Black, Indigenous folks of color, Asian American, Asian folks, and Pacific Islander folks, this is a legacy that we have been trying to transform since the beginning of time. So before we bring our voices and our wisdom into this space, we want to do right by our people who have set the path with which we follow in this particular moment. So wherever you are, I'd like to invite your body to come into a position that offers you more ease, more care, and some receptivity, because we're about to bring some more of our folks that we are in relationship with into this space. Take a moment to adjust. And as you are doing that, notice how you're showing up in relationship to honoring ancestors. I want to recognize that some of us have complicated connections and relationships to ancestors, given the histories of colonization and slavery that some of us come from. Some of us do not know who our people are. And some of us might feel more connected with the earth, the life form that is also guiding us, the ocean, the red dirt, the mountains, the fire. So if you would rather connect with a non-human entity and more with a earthly entity, feel free to do that in this practice as well. When you're ready, and if it feels available to you, connect with your breath. Our breath is a life force that extends through time. Notice if you need more breath or less. And where is your breath coming from and where is it traveling towards? See if you can move towards a pace that offers expansion and more connection and love for your body. As we invite our ancestors in this space, we want to create a loving and caring container for them to enter into. If it feels available to you and you have capacity, bring both hands to your heart. In our tradition, in my Igbo tradition, we believe that the heart muscles and the heartbeat offer songs, offer medicine back through our legacy. So as you feel your heartbeat, first notice your life. Notice that you are alive here on purpose. And then what is something that you are grateful for? That an ancestor, whether it's someone who comes from your own lineage or someone who is a chosen ancestor or transcestor that you've learned from, what are you grateful for about their life? Let yourself just feel that gratitude and let your heartbeat carry that gratitude throughout your body and extending out into this space. And before we bring them in, let's hold why. Why do we want our ancestors here? For you, it might be so that our healing in this moment extends to them as well. It might be to extend even more gratitude. Maybe you are feeling isolated and want connection, or they're feeling isolated and they want connection. They want to build a bridge to you. Just locate your why. And when you are ready, when you feel an impulse below the neck from your heart, speak their names. You can speak their names through words coming out of your mouth, through breath, through sound, whatever makes the most sense for you and your tradition, your lineage, and how you want to love upon your people right now. I came prepared with some water. In my tradition, we pour libation, and we have life meet life. So I'm pouring water to meet the life of a plant, a peace lily that's growing beside me. And as I say my names and also feel into the names that you all are sharing, I pour libation as an act of reverence to the lives that are joining us, to the work that they have put forward, and to the ways that they are healing in service for our collective liberation. I speak the names of Harriet Tubman, of Rose Madu, of Iketa Imobala, of the ocean in Lagos. I speak the names of Delani Ashley Yon, Paul Andre Michaels, Jirche Tan, Dayu Feng, Soon Shong Park, Hyung Jong Grant, Soon Sha Kim, and Young Yu, our ancestors who were murdered last week in Atlanta. I honor all of our queer and trans people who have taught us how to live generatively in our bodies and who are constantly fighting and teaching us how to be free in these times. May the work that we do be in right relationship with our people. May it heal our generations in the past and extend healing into the future 7 generations from now. Ashe, which means the power to change, and so it is.
Ashe. Ashe.
Aisha. What a great way to begin this conversation. And we're here today to share the importance of somatic practices in terms of creating social change and speaking about social justice. And I have 3 experts with me here today who have a wealth of knowledge. What an honor to have each of you here today. And I would like to open up the conversation and ask you, what is the importance of somatic practices in social justice?
What a
Aisha.
This is basically my favorite subject. Hands down. It's basically all I write about, think about, talk about. I am currently in the Pacific Northwest, in the traditional lands of the Salish peoples, the Multnomah, the Clackamas, the Wapato. And I think one of the biggest pieces about where we are anchoring in social justice is a complete paradigm shift. You know, we're looking deep into the lens of the intersection between colonization and capitalism, and how those practices have not only shaped us in this current time, but how it has shaped us over the history of humanity. And the embodiment of those worldviews of domination are practices that we are each living out moment to moment to moment to moment to moment. And the process of unwinding those embodiments requires a technology or a pathway, some form of shifting into what I think about as more aligned with an indigenous worldview, or we could think about it in sort of the light of like, how do we come back to being kin again, right? And I think about somatics as the vehicle by which we can do that, by which we can reestablish our intimacy with ourselves in order to be able to be in different relationship both with ourselves and with other humans, but also with the non-human relations around us and with our ancestral relations. And I think that this worldview that has galvanized within the contemporary social justice movement across different platforms of that movement has been a complete different way of orienting. That rather than trying to force ourselves into systems that are oppressive and broken, that instead we are trying to transform the entire system.
So Yalini, please share a little bit with us. How do you use somatic practices in your work?
Well, I think, Aisha, you so much of what you were saying resonated so deeply, and I think the connection, self-connection, connection to each other, being in healthier relationship with all beings, the earth, and each other, is definitely the container, the soil that this work grows out of for me. More specifically and concretely, the way in which I often enter social justice spaces is really using the body as a metaphor, as a fractal. The body has so many wisdoms to offer us, especially when we are going through a restorative or healing process, that we can draw upon when we take a look at our own communities. I think it is one of the ways in which the universe sends us wisdom for how we can transform our societies and human relations. So I'm often looking at the lessons that the body teaches us about harm, preventing, interrupting, and addressing harm. So how can we look at the kinetic chain, and what does that have to offer us and teach us about how our organizations or our formations, our communities are functioning? We know that if we are moving our arm without a connection to our ribs, that over time, we're going to wear down these precious, essential parts of our body, right? So what does it mean when, as a community or a movement, we are moving while we're disconnected? How are we going to navigate the harmful forces that are, and violent forces that we have to encounter? So I think about the ways in which through movement, we dissipate or utilize force in order to prevent harm or damage to the body. I think about the conditions of gravity and how through movement, we are working to prevent that compression that grinds, that could grind our vertebra, or could cause that pinching of a nerve. And how do we support our movements in recognizing when there's compression? What sensations are we experiencing? Is this a moment of growth? The kind of generative pain that's needed, the tearing of muscles in order to rebuild, in order for us to become stronger, to be able to navigate a situation? Or are we experiencing a pain that is happening because we are damaging our bodies? So those distinctions between what is harm, what is misalignment, what is a trigger, or when is it that our sympathetic nervous system is being hypervigilant, or responding in a persistent, activated manner, and really being clear around what is that sensation? What is that discomfort? Is it grief? Is it resentment? Is it growth? You know, so really taking those lessons from the body and 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 inviting people to be present with their body so that their body can offer wisdoms for how we collaborate towards solutions around the problems that we're navigating.
Thank you so much, Yalini. And Adaku, if you could also please share on this topic with us.
Yes. Double tapping, echoing a lot of what Aisha and Yalini have offered. And it feels so good to be aligned around how we're thinking about and talking about how we center somatics within social justice. For me, personal transformation and systemic transformation are interdependent. We need each other to fuel how the other becomes fully realized. If we focus only on personal transformation, we are not shifting the conditions that make violence, punishment, genocide more and more possible in our worlds. And if we only focus on systemic transformation, we run the risk of continuing to embody survival strategies, which are super, super smart, or embodying systems of oppression that we are trying to transform. And so for me, inside of this work, there's both a reverence and an understanding that the personal, community, and systemic places of transformation need to be in constant conversation and sometimes constant agitation with one another, so that loving agitation, so that we are accountable to how change happens at the layer of the body, the physical, emotional, spiritual body, and at the layer of our communities, and at the layer of these different systems that we are trying to shift. Something that I think about often, I've been organizing for 2 decades and also doing healing work and teaching. And many of our folks have been deeply heartbroken, burnt out, tired, fatigued, not just obviously from these generational systems of harm that have been impacting our communities and our families and ourselves, but also from the ways that we do movement building work. Even though we might have really compelling values and visions for how we want to see and transform the world, sometimes what we practice, there's a big distance between what we value and who we actually are. And that can translate and show up in how we do movement building. What are the ways that we cultivate relationships that help to shift culture? What are the ways that we do door knocking? How do we listen to the ways that our people are being impacted by prisons and climate change? And more, I want the lens with which we act from to come from a place that is embodied. And what I mean by that is, we're able, it is us, it doesn't just live in this kind of neck up space that capitalism, supremacy, patriarchy wants us to operate from, the intellectualized space, that what we value lives throughout every single strand of our somas. It breathes through how we think about each other. And we don't necessarily have to think about it. It becomes us, just like breathing, We don't have to think about breathing. Our body breathes us consistently. And so for our work, can our values become our breathing, so that we don't have to automatically orient towards the seductive forces of capitalism and patriarchy and imperialism that we are taught even before we're an atom inside somebody's womb. We're getting all of these messages and expectations about who we get to be, what kind of power we get to have. And as soon as we're born, we're taught ways to practice that on each other. And it fundamentally fuels into our movement work. And it also impacts how our people are sustained. You know, movement building work, social change work, this is lifelong. This is lifelong. And more, I want our people who are committed to being in the work to be here for the long term and be in their right role that supports how we collectively are contributing to this for me, collective love work of how we build lives or co-create lives with our ancestors and future generations that are more in right relationship with the land, with our people. And I feel like somatics really cultivates a compelling offer in deepening our self-awareness around how are we showing up right now? And it's how we're showing up, is that in alignment or not in alignment? Are the ways that we are cultivating power accountable to a power over kind of practice where there is more domination and manipulation, or are we moving closer towards more interdependence? And in addition to that, I feel like somatics also offers compelling practices that support us in shifting how we are, because we will always show up how we practice. How So is who you are, no matter how much you can talk a good game, you know? And in order for us to shift, we have to practice something different. And the body also has to trust what we are changing into. So I think somatics, or I know actually, not even I think, that somatics offers really intentional, compelling practices to restructure on a cellular, muscular, generational level how our bodies need to change over time, and change in a way that's sustained, because we are getting pressure all the time. There is increased pressure, especially, Lord, the last year, the amount of crisis, chaos, contradiction that we're inside of right now can create such a freeze, lack of hope, creates conditions for us to practice things that actually move us away from what we're trying to cultivate right now. And I really believe and have witnessed in my own work that somatics can create long-term change that can show up consistently in the face of pressure, and hold rooted in our values when systems of oppression are compelling us to do something different.
Something I want to add to that, Adaku, this piece around like bringing it into the right now, and to illustrate essentially this, what you're describing. You know, even in the context of coming into this conversation, right? I'm an agent of naming. That's part of what I do in my practice as a somatic trauma therapist. And when we talk about, you know, navigating microaggressions, right? There is all of this energy that is present in the body when we are experiencing a microaggression. And that energy, you know, stimulating the sympathetic nervous system, and that energy being energy that's ours and from our own lifetime. And then that energy that's also being, you know, coming from ancestral enactments, trauma enactments in our body. So we are sort of doubly hit with this hot energy in the system, and then are expected to navigate effectively or skillfully in a world at large that is constantly impacting with intentional harm or unintentional harm. And even coming into this conversation, there was a number of microaggressions that I witnessed that now, as we open the door for ancestral reverence and the joining of our well in spirit. That if you noticed, as I was sitting, like there were tears that were coming out of my body, which is my nervous system's pattern for releasing energy.
Yeah.
And then my capacity to be able to be in this conversation and to share with the world about the importance of somatics for liberation, right? I can actually be available to this conversation. So in real time, when we are holding these practices at a immediate level, in real time, we can make change. Whereas like I know of myself in the past, had I had all that energy in my body, I would not be able to be effective or show up or even name this right now.
Mm-hmm.
So the importance of, somatics in the course of liberatory action, I love all the $5 words, right? I could talk about it abstractly up here all day long, but that doesn't matter. What actually matters is how am I embodying shift every given moment? And knowing that I, as a Black body, need to navigate a world that is going to be microaggressive to me, whether it wants to or not, whether it's intentional or not, right? I have to know how to move with ease with that. I have to know how to find my resource in that, right? And I also have to know in a community how to be a resource in that.
That's right.
Right? So you might have noticed that, I've sort of used my voice to shift the direction of the conversation. And there are ways that we can do that skillfully and with grace and without aggression and without hostility, in ways that allow us to constantly move the principles of liberation toward ease and spaciousness. And I think that that is really the heart of what somatics offers us, is the ability to recognize ease and spaciousness, to have dexterity and rapid responsiveness, like attunedness, to be able to find the path toward how can I be here in this way that has space.
Yes. I'm just so grateful that you mentioned the real-time change that we're inside of right now, because our bodies are always changing. And Aisha, the intentional shifts that you made with your voice, with your vulnerability right now, and just sharing all of what you offered around your nervous system and your connection with ancestors changed me. Like I could feel, I could feel my butt cheeks unclenching. I could feel my nervous system softening, and my heartbeat softening and slowing as well. And
Here I go again.
this is the first time that we've ever met each other, but I'm like, I want to move closer to you. Like your vulnerability is creating this bridge. I can feel that in my soma, in my body right now. And I want to say thank you, first of all, for that. Thank you so much. And for me, it really models how compelling and also how infectious we are, when we change, particularly when we change in a way that's moving towards, as you said, this ease, this spaciousness, this connection. Like even without thinking about it for myself, like I could feel my body being compelled to more openness, more care, more connection. And it's profound and offers a lot for the quality of relationships that we need to be building in this time in order to move collectively together. So I just wanted to offer that love and just grateful for you.
Yes, my heart to yours. Yalini, you were going to say something.
I'm just sitting with and experiencing the energy of this exchange. I also want to offer gratitude and thank you for, I feel like also inviting us into deeper presence and to to also break out of like a performative, let's skip over, you know,
Bring
and
it out.
yeah, let's let's do realer and more present. So thank you for that. Yeah, and I also loved what the details of what y'all were just speaking to as to what was happening in the body as well. And this spaciousness is what I understand as resilience. I feel like resilience is often taught to us as enduring. I definitely was conditioned into actually not crying the tears. I don't have time to grieve that. I don't have time. I have to move on, especially the little things, right? Like, oh, this rejection or this didn't, whatever. Like, there are bigger things in life. There are certain things that I'm allowed to grieve. There are certain things that I'm not allowed to grieve. And I've definitely been reminding myself. I think that's also the Gen X critique, is that we were emo as teenagers, and then we repressed our emotions, and the Zoomers and the millennials are like, feel. And but I think something that has been challenging for me is that when somatics practice gets kind of diminished to to breath being used to cool down the nervous system and almost deactivate ourselves. When what I am often inviting into the space is this deeper kind of presence, this bravery to be able to engage with each other, and then also across difference to unearth our differences and our divergences, and to stimulate creativity and innovation towards solutions. And what I felt like both Aisha and Adaku, what y'all were talking about, is actually activating the parasympathetic nervous system, our ability to be in touch with our heartbeat, and not that the parasympathetic nervous system is gonna cool down our activation, but it's actually supporting us in being brave, vulnerable, creative, and solution oriented. And that sometimes what I see happening is like, oh, a moment happens, it's uncomfortable. We're going to calm ourselves down, and it actually prevents us from, or it's used to be conflict averse instead of actually engaging in that in the conflict towards a generative solution. So
in traumatology, we would call that an override. We would call it override, where you're essentially using somatic interventions as a distractions rather than as like a authentic making contact with parts of self that need attention and environmental concerns that need attention.
Yeah, I see that management of emotions is just deeply connected to the culture of control, punishment, and policing that we live in, where the more we try to occupy more of our humanity, the more systems want to control the pace, the way, the flow, the type that it extends out of us. And what you both are speaking to redirects, reaverts, and reclaims the abundance that, whether it's the wellness industrial complex or prison systems, tries to shrink or make scarce in us.
Yeah. Yes.
What a rich conversation. I'm just in awe of your knowledge and the depth of the conversation and the somatic component. So very important. And I would love for each of you to share something that you want to leave the listeners and viewers with on this topic. Who would like to begin that?
I'll go. I think that there is a healing progression that happens that allows us to begin to dismantle our internalized experiences of capitalism and colonization and white body supremacy. And I see somatics as being the beginning point of that healing progression, that through somatics, we develop an intimacy with the body. And that intimacy, that self-awareness, that interoception, that those ways of knowing that bring us back into right brain relationship, that bring us back into our capacity for deep connection, again, with ourselves and with all of our relations, human and non-human, where we can begin to hear each other in a nonverbal language. And that intimacy then builds a sense of trust, like I can trust my body. And with that trust builds a sense of integrity. Like not only can I trust my body, but I have competence and dexterity and solidity within that. And that integrity builds autonomy. Like I am a separate being that is also not separate. So there's an autonomy that is an interconnected autonomy. And then from there, that autonomy builds a sense of sovereignty. That I, in my interconnected self, and with the connections I have around me, deserve to live. Our will is potent. And it's from that place of body sovereignty that the structures of capitalism and colonization that we live out and live out and live out in a self-monitoring way are completely broken.
Mm.
So, you know, the thing I would leave the listener with is like, start. Start.
Mhm. I can hop in and follow this thread. I want to invite another ancestor into this space that I often invite into a lot of the spaces that I hold. Lucille Clifton, a Black feminist writer, who says, you know, won't you come celebrate with me that every day something has tried to kill me and has failed. Every day something has tried to kill you, us, and has failed. And part of how we are winning and combating what is trying to kill us is the wisdom of your body right now, and not just right now, but what your body has learned around how to survive, how to love, how to have boundaries, how to grieve. And so I want to offer gratitude to your feelings and what you know right now about how to live. And thank you for your life. Thank you for existing. and then there's more. There is more, you know. Can we courageously turn and face and answer questions about, are the ways that we are showing up from our survival tendencies to our values, to our organizing strategies, are they in alignment and moving us closer to a world that is building more liberation, or are they moving us towards harm? And really assess yourself, really listen. For me, organizing, you know, begins by listening. We listen to the conditions that are shaping our people's lives. So will you take the risk of listening to, you know, what are the conditions that have impacted how you be right now, how you think, what you believe, how you occupy power, where you extend your life force, and where is it in alignment, or where is it not in alignment? And starting with where you are, or I would say even continuing the journey and refining it so that it's moving us, you individually and us collectively, towards shifting systems and building power with our people. I also want to say fuck perfectionism. And there are these like, you know, especially right now within like the wellness industrial complex, and there are ways in which the terrain of healing can become linear and become based off of or regurgitate standards that are just really fucking harmful. And your body, there's nobody like you. There's nobody like me, nobody like Yalini, nobody like Aisha and Gayatri. You are so unique, and whatever your path towards transformation is going to be distinct and unique as well. And we got to respect that. And the ways in which capitalism forces us to compare and move our journey too quickly or inauthentically is hard and awful. And so if that comes in, which it will, because that is part of how the system works, you know, to avert us away from where we need to grow. Just know that it's a lie. It's a lie, and actually, the messiness, the non-linearity, the trying to find our way, and if it feels hard, it's because it's hard. It's really hard. And know that you are not alone on this path. You know, we started off this circle bringing in our ancestors. They are people who live in different kinds of bodies that are committed to seeing us through. And there are also people like the folks on this call who are, we have been committed to this work for a really long time. I know for myself, I'm committed to doing this work for a really long time. So you don't have to do it by yourself. Find community, you know, and build connection. And the last thing I'll say is, what is your North Star that is helping you commit in the face of change, in the face of a lot of shit that's going to try and snap you back to familiar patterns that might not serve you? What's your North Star? You know, Harriet Tubman teaches me in that work. It's like not just, you know, earthly North Star, which is also such a powerful guide, but also what's the commitment? What is guiding how we are moving forward? What's the future that we hope for?
And yes, Aisha and Adaku, I'm just sitting with all the juiciness and all the fertility of everything that you've shared. I'm really feeling the messiness, Adaku, that you're speaking to. I'm a Virgo. I like to do things well. I like to execute. I like to win. And I feel like some of the greatest gifts that have really supported my transformation is actually when I've come out of balance, when I've made some mistakes, and it is not easy for me to move through those feelings. You know, I have a lot of work that I need to do around, you know, the negative thoughts that enter when I feel like I may have failed, or my intention has not met my impact. And I feel like that is sometimes the most fertile place for us to go, and to always be in a space of like, let me be precise and right and virtuous, can really be a trapping. So thank you for reminding us that I actually find that when our body, when we are injured, when we are in a place where we're having to reorient our relationship to our body, relearn and listen, understand our body because it has changed or because it is experiencing a pain, and we have to understand what it is that we need to support. That is where so many wisdoms unfurl. And similarly, when we make that mistake, when we're challenged, when we're told, hey, what you did was racist, or it's a microaggression, or it was bigoted, or there's something that's not, unfair about the situation, that's really our opportunity to like figure it out, repattern ourselves, discover a new way, move through the grief, and reemerge anew.
There's three words I want to
Thank
use
you, friend. Okay.
to
Yeah,
shape,
Aisha. Yeah.
shape that just a little bit, Yalini, which is yield, surrender, rest.
Hmm.
And that in those spaces where it's like, oh, this, I did it wrong, or like, oh, I didn't quite, it wasn't in alignment with my birth of truth. It wasn't in alignment with my ancestral purpose, or the wisdom that I am receiving from, the generations. That when we can find the yield, that from that place there is all of this fruit.
So thank you for all that. So I know there's so much more we can say. So much. I see it in all your faces and I feel it in my heart. This is so important. We could go on for days and we're just beginning, it feels like. And there is so much more that wants to come up. So when people want to connect with you to continue that conversation, very brief each, please, where can they find you?
So folks can find me on my website at adakuuta.com and at harrietsapothecary.com. Also on Instagram, personal IG, Solar Bliss, SOULARBLISS, and at Harriet's Apothecary.
Thank you. And Aisha.
Easiest way to find me is on Instagram at full_flight_wellness, and the links to all of my things are at the top of the bio.
Fantastic. And Yalini.
On Instagram, I'm Yalini Dream, YALINI Dream, DREAM. That's also my website. And then Vision Change Win and EM Arts are also organizations that I work through.
Wonderful. So may this conversation ignite everyone who's listening and may it bring courage. And to me, I'm sitting here in reverence. I almost have tears. I feel the importance of this conversation. I'm so grateful to each of you for having spent many years of your life to give people the tools to connect to themselves and to heal trauma and to create liberation in the world. And I loved what you each said. You pointed towards that when we come back to ourselves, when we feel ourselves, we can create a bridge in the world and to the outside of us, and to start to create the kind of world we all want to live in. So it begins with each of us. So thank you, each of you, for being here today and being part of this very important conversation. Thank you, Adaku Uta, T. Aisha Edwards, and Yalini Dream. And thank you all for listening to this great session today. Thank you.